that there was indeed a woman who was with the shooter in the footage that was captured by the houses nearby the area. And for whatever reason, the FBI has not yet released or even acknowledged that that footage exists. I just want to say that I feel like at the beginning of this investigation, I was very clear. I said there will be no fakeness and there will be no gayness in this investigation. And apparently there were some people who did not take me seriously or literally, because there are a lot of little lies being told, right? Charlie gets assassinated, and the very people who were threatening him reputationally and financially are now trying to memorialize him.
It started with a tremor in her voice, the kind that carries both pain and revelation. Candace Owens wasn't sitting in his studio this time. No lights, no makeup, no political podium. Just her, a camera, and a silence heavy enough to make millions hold their breath. She said she had found something Charlie Kirk left behind, a letter, a private note written to his wife just weeks before his death. No one expected what came next. As she unfolded the paper on camera, the air shifted, her hands trembled, her tone softened, and for the first time the internet saw Candace Owens not as the bold commentator or firebrand activist, but as a friend, a witness to a man's last truth. The words were raw, haunting, and heartbreakingly simple. Charlie had written about regret, about pressure, about living in a world where loyalty and ambition collide. He spoke about his wife, the woman he called his calm in chaos, and how the weight of public life had begun to crush everything private. Sometimes, he wrote, you build an empire so loud you can't hear your own heartbeat. That single line broke the internet.
For weeks, speculation swirled. Was it a farewell, a cry for help, or something deeper, a coded warning from a man who knew too much? Within hours, news outlets scrambled to cover it. Commentators called it tragic. Others called it a message from beyond. But those closest to Charlie knew there was always more beneath his words. Candace revealed that the note wasn't found in a drawer or a phone. It was hidden, tucked inside a leather-bound journal, sealed away in his home office. No one knew it existed, not even his family. And that's where the story took a darker turn. Just days before the letter surfaced, the Kirk estate had been quietly battling rumors about internal power struggles, financial disputes, and a growing divide inside Turning Point USA. What was coincidence and what was carefully timed? People started connecting dots that didn't want to be connected. The widow's silence, the staff changes, the missing emails, and now a letter that spoke of being watched even in faith. Social media lit up with theories. Some said Candace was brave for releasing it. Others said she was being used, a pawn in a game that had outgrown even her. But what no one could deny was the emotion in her eyes when she said, "Charlie wasn't just a public figure. He was my friend. And if this was his truth, the world deserves to hear it." For a moment, even her critics fell silent. It wasn't a scandal anymore. It was human. A man trying to make sense of his world before it slipped away. A woman trying to honor his words without breaking the people left behind. And somewhere between grief and conspiracy, truth began to blur.
Days after Candace's video went viral, the internet became a battlefield of emotion, speculation, and silence. Some called it manipulation. Others called it courage. But no one could ignore the weight of Charlie's words, or the eerie calm of his widow, who hadn't said a single thing publicly. Behind closed doors, insiders whispered that the widow had known about the journal all along, that she had wanted to protect it, or perhaps protect someone mentioned within it. Because in that same journal, Charlie didn't just write about love or regret. He wrote about loyalty, betrayal, and the cost of silence. One entry read,
When truth becomes dangerous, the brave call it faith, and the fearful call it treason. It was poetic and chilling. Soon, questions began to rise about the forces around Charlie, donors, partners, political allies, who stood to lose everything if his private doubts ever became public. Candace's decision to reveal the letter suddenly looked less like an emotional act and more like a disruption of power. Within days, media headlines spun two competing stories. Candace Owens exploits friend's death for views versus Candace Owens defends Charlie Kirk's legacy through truth.
The divide was deep, not just online, but in the very circles Charlie once controlled. Meanwhile, a private recording leaked, allegedly from one of Charlie's last staff meetings, where he said, "I no longer know who to trust in my own house." That line, paired with his letter, painted a haunting portrait, a man surrounded by loyalty, yet utterly alone. Candace, for her part, refused to back down. In a follow-up interview, her voice cracked as she said, "If I didn't share it, his words would have died with him, and he didn't write them to be forgotten." Her tone wasn't political, it was personal, and that's what made it hit harder. Because beneath all the noise, people began to see what had been there all along, a human story trapped inside the machinery of influence. But the widow's silence remained deafening. When approached by reporters, she simply said, "Grief doesn't need an audience." That single sentence drew both empathy and suspicion. Behind her calm exterior, rumors began to swirl about sealed financial records, deleted correspondence, and quiet meetings with Charlie's former advisors. Some insiders hinted that there was a second letter, a note Charlie wrote but never sent, a final message meant for his wife alone. No one has ever confirmed it, but one anonymous source claimed it read, "The world will remember the version of me they created. I just hope you remember the man I was before that." That line, real or not, became the heartbeat of a viral movement online. #RememberCharlie. Thousands began posting tributes, old clips, and unseen photos. It was as if for the first time, the internet wanted to strip away the politics and remember the person. In the end, Candace Owens' revelation didn't just reopen old wounds, it exposed something deeper. How fame blurs truth, how silence can be louder than confession, and how grief can be used as both shield and weapon. The world may never know whether that letter was meant to be read or whether Candace was right to share it. But one thing is certain, in that fragile piece of paper, Charlie Kirk's voice refused to be erased. And maybe that's the part that scares people the most. Because in a world built on image, his final words weren't scripted. They were real. And real is dangerous.